Hello, this is Knight again. I've got a lot of videos that are, you know, kind of lighthearted, gaming and stuff. But I really want to take a moment for something that's a little more serious. And I had a thought today. It was about the marijuana issue and such, and also Roe v. Wade, because over the last couple of weeks I've been having a rather heated discussion with somebody on YouTube about, the right to abort and all that stuff. I was thinking about something about the marijuana legalization issue and that was could the marijuana legalization issue be setting the ground for right to life organizations to overturn Roe v. Wade? And this is kind of my thoughts on the matter. Because what was Roe v. Wade? What did it do? It was in essence, it was somebody sued somebody over their right to have an abortion or whatever. And so what Roe v. Wade did was that it, in essence, said that a woman had the right to kill her child. In essence, there's more to it, all that, but in essence, they were saying that the state can't interfere with a woman's right to abort her child or whatever. So um, So in essence, it was saying the government, or at least the judiciary branch, the Supreme Court at the time, said that it was in essence saying that the federal government had the right to tell states not to, that they could not tell a woman that it was illegal to have an abortion. So what's interesting though is of late is that the marijuana legalization groups have been trying to, or have been working on getting marijuana legalized in each of the different states, and and so these various states have been passing laws that allow for various degrees of marijuana use within their borders, even though uh, the federal government still says that it is illegal to possess or whatever uh, marijuana. So here's a question I have to ask: is if the government says that a certain activity is illegal, but the states pass their own laws to bypass the federal ruling, because within the state, within their borders, they have the right to say what laws are pertainable within their borders. It's when they go outside the borders, usually when you start having issues with the federal government coming and having their rules and stuff, because the federal law uh, dictates state commerce and stuff. So if something's not sold outside the state, then supposedly the state should have the right to dictate what is legal and stuff within the state. So then the other question would then be, if a state can say that, well, we're going to say that this substance, this material, is legal when you say it's illegal, should it also not rule the same way as if the federal government says it, well, it's legal? Well, can the states not come back and say, uh, well, we're not going to, that it really shouldn't be illegal, because it's the states and the rights of the people to decide that is not. And I'm going to go into more detail as to why this is and stuff. But the most insidious thing that I find about the abortion issue is that it wasn't set. It wasn't law. It wasn't legislation that made this ruling. It was the judiciary. The judiciary branch is supposed to interpret laws, based on the Constitution and the the letter of the law. They're supposed to uh, mediate between two parties and figure out what the law says, and therefore, determine who's in the right, who's in the wrong, based off the law. Well, the legislative branch is supposed to be the one that makes the laws. They're supposed to be the ones that create laws, rulings, rules, or at least I should say, and they should be the ones that set the constitutional amendments and stuff like that. The judiciary branch is supposed to only see what the law is, see what the Constitution specifically says, and then interpret laws based off those two matters. The judiciary branch is not supposed to actually make laws and rules outside what the Constitution says and what the laws say. They're only supposed to rule on what the law says and then figure out who's in the right and who's in the wrong based off the law. So, what is wrong with abortion? Well, most doctors agree that even those who have, even abortionists, will often realize and say that, an abortion kills a child. It is an actual person. It is a person. It is a child that they're taking apart. They're tearing apart, and they have to actually go through the remains that they take out of a woman's womb to make sure they have the entire contents of the entire baby, to make sure that it is in fact intact. And I've seen videos on YouTube where a former abortionist, or a person, an OGBYN, whatever, who performed abortions, he suddenly had this epiphany that where one day he almost lost his daughter to like a car accident or something, and or a friend of his lost a daughter or something to a car accident, and therefore he realized that when he was performing abortions, he was actually killing a child, and here he was looking at the remains of a child every time he did an abortion, and therefore he eventually gave up the practice of performing abortions because he just couldn't morally justify it anymore. But so what is exactly wrong with abortion? Well, by the third week, the baby has a detectable heartbeat, and between 20th and 25th weeks, somewhere in between there, the child can actually start feeling pain. People try and say, oh well, it doesn't feel anything, and all this stuff. Well, yes, unfortunately, it does, and it is a child. It is a person. It is not just a lump of flesh. It's no more or less a lump of flesh than any person on earth. Even though we're born or whatever, we're growing and stuff. We are still a bundle of cells, if you want to go that route. So a baby in the womb is not just a lump of flesh or a bundle of cells. This is this is an actual person. If they're not a person, then we're not a person. If we are a person, and so are they, where do you draw the line between where someone is or is not a person? Because everybody's life is cheapened when we don't see everyone as life, even when they're still unborn. So you have to ask yourself, when did you become a person? When did any of us become a person? When did we gain our fundamental rights under the law, under the Constitution? If a person is only a person when they're born, well, what happened to the minute before you were born? Could somebody have killed you a minute before you were born, even though you could be viable outside the womb? And a baby is viable up to as early as like 4 or 5 months. With some help, but a child's, there are some people, like a person who's in a coma, they need help, but they're still considered a person. And, it's supposed to be with a heavy heart that somebody, pulls the plug on someone who's assisted with, mechanical means. Is it, another thing, if you're a person from the time your heart starts beating, which, if you want to go the biblical route, the Bible says, the life of a person, the life of creatures in the blood. If the blood is pumping through the the fetus, through the child, then according to the biblical mandate, that constitutes a living creature. And most doctors will agree that a child is a living person. And most women won't know that they're pregnant until at least they've missed one period. And by the time they get tested on all that, it's usually well after the third week mark, and that's well after when the heart starts beating. And also in many states, if a person kills a pregnant woman, they can be charged with 2 counts of murder, not just one, 2 counts of homicide. So the question has to be asked, why is that? If it's just a lump of, if a pregnant woman just has a lump of goo or a lump of cells in her body, how is it then that she can be, her child can be counted as another death? If her child counts as a death, why is it that somebody else's child doesn't count? How is it that one person is wanted and another person isn't? How is it that the person who isn't wanted is any less of a person than one that is? I mean, what is murder? Murder is killing somebody who's apparently not wanted by somebody. How's that right or just to not be able to protect both parties equally under the law? So, is abortion homicide? If a child is indeed a person, a living human being, which most doctors will say, yeah, they're going to grow up to be a person. They're already taking the shape of a person. Their genome is separate from the mother's and the father's. They're a separate DNA entity. The child has got its own blood supply. It's not connected directly to the mother. It passes nutrients to the placenta. It's not. It's only the only thing the mom is doing is in essence feeding the child. It's separate from her through the placenta. So if it's a person, then killing that person is indeed a homicide, because the killing of a human being due to the act of omission of another, found at dictionary.law.com. The definition of a homicide is the killing of a person due to the act or omission of another person. Thereby, killing a child through abortion would be considered homicide. So now the question is abortion a justifiable homicide? Well, justifiable homicide is usually in the case of, we're trying to save the life of another person. Now, if a robber goes into a convenience store and starts shooting up the place, or threatens to shoot up the place, someone has the right to shoot them in self-defense or in the defense of others. There's also justifiable homicides, like if the state has to execute a criminal because of something that criminal has done. If the criminals themselves guilty of murder, then it is within the state's rights to put that person to death, which is justifiable homicide. So the question I have to ask then is how is abortion justifiable? There's nothing. The only thing that be justifiable, the only reason why abortion might be justifiable is if the life of the mother is in danger. Because if you can commit a homicide for to save the life of another, then that would be the only time in my mind that would be justifiable is because the mother's life's in danger. Sometimes because the baby's life's in danger, like an entropic pregnancy or whatever. But only if the life of the mother's in danger. So some people might say, well, what about rape or what about incest? Well, I got to ask, is rape a capital crime? Is it a capital punishment for a crime? The crime is that is it? Do you put to death the rapist when a rapist commits rape? Well, if not, if you even put the father to death because of a rape, why then kill an innocent child that resulted from that? Yes, the woman might have some residual psychological issues, but oftentimes if a woman carries a child to term, she can actually have a lot more. She can actually recover faster from her ordeal because it's not the child's fault that the father did the thing he did. It's the child itself is innocent of it. It's just the father that did the act, and there's a lot of health complications that could come about because a woman has an abortion. Which is more important. Her having some psychological issues because she brought a child to term, or have her later have issues with not being able to have a child later because abortion caused damage to her reproductive organs, or that she later has a later higher risk of coming out with breast cancer or whatever. What it just doesn't seem like it just doesn't add up. And also, mostly, rape is like less than 5% of the population that are doing it. It's like maybe like 3 or there's some that have there's a wide range of how many women have an abortion because she was raped, and it's a very small number due to the whole the number of the entire amount of abortions that are committed. Rape is a very small very small amount of those who have an abortion. Another thing that's rather nasty is that a lot of times in the course of incest, abortion is actually used to cover up incestuous activities and statutory rape. If a father gets his daughter pregnant through an incestuous affair, an incestuous activity, how is that? That's kind of relieving a man of the responsibilities that he has for taking care of the child he made. So and then oftentimes girls are often compelled out of fear or humiliation to get an abortion. They're actually coerced to do that. And I'll cover that a little bit later on, the actual statistics on that. But so in the case of incest, it's actually incestuous affairs and stuff. They oftentimes have an abortion to cover it up, and therefore, to protect that is actually to protect other illegal activities that are going on that you should not be covering up. They should be coming to the light. And that's the sad part about abortion as a whole, is that it's people trying to cover up the fact that they did something that resulted in a life. It's a baby's result because of the natural activity of creating a baby. So then there's the argument of bodily autonomy. Well, one thing I have to ask is, where is it stated in the U.S. Constitution we have an absolute right to body autonomy, especially to the extent that we have we can indiscriminately kill children because of suppose this right of bodily autonomy. Well, there's a lot of reasons that a person doesn't have, that exact right of bodily autonomy. And if people bring up this argument, they're oftentimes on the left. They oftentimes want people to have, excuse me, they want people to have these abortions because they have the right to bodily autonomy. Well, what if somebody doesn't want to have an immunization because for whatever reason they don't, maybe it's they feel that an immunization is affecting their own personal health and stuff. Well, a lot of people on the left they want they want to force people to get their immune vaccinations and stuff, and yet they want bodily autonomy for them, for the right to kill their child. Well, one thing I have a question about, well, here's this. If a woman invited a child into her home, because like I say, most abortions are performed on a woman who has had consensual sex. Most sex is consensual, and of course, one of the main things the main thing that the body is designed for sexual activity, sexual intercourse, is to make children. That is the primary function of the body, is to make children. If you engage in consensual sex, are you not inviting that child willingly and knowingly into your body, because you're willingly and knowingly allowing a man to deposit his sperm inside you? So, you had the right to your bodily autonomy the moment you had a man come inside you, literally and figuratively speaking. So if a woman, invited a child into her home, would it be illegal or moral for her to hire a hitman to come into her home and kill that child with an axe or something, with a fire axe or something? That would, if somebody did that, there'd be people, crying out with, how could this happen? Why would this woman kill her child with an axe or something? Well, that's what you're doing with the unborn. You're going in there with a suction and in essence chopping a baby into pieces. If you don't have a right outside the womb to do something, you don't have the same right to do it even when it's in the womb. If it's a person on the outside, it's a person on the inside. You don't have the right to kill a person. And here's back to body autonomy. The stat I was telling you about earlier, approximately 64% of girls are forced or coerced to have an abortion. Well, where is their right to bodily autonomy? To not have an abortion? Where's their autonomy to say, hey, well, I want to think for myself, I don't want to have an abortion? Well, these are girls who are being forced to do so, at the hands of a boyfriend or a father or someone else who's gotten them pregnant, who doesn't want to have the responsibility of raising the child, so they coerce her into having the abortion. There's a link to it. I'll put this link down in the description too. But where is their autonomy not to have an abortion? So this argument for bodily autonomy, it's full of holes. So one of the reasons why I made this video and I was thinking about this was, I personally, I don't like the idea of recreational marijuana. It messes with the brain. It causes all sorts of stuff, and especially in developing brains, it can cause a lot of problems. So I personally find the use of marijuana, dangerous, at least. Now, I understand that there might be some medicinal purposes to marijuana, or uses for it, and I'm open to the idea of a doctor, prescribing it and keeping an eye on how people use medicinal marijuana. But the argument is made, well, it's safer to use marijuana than to, drink and drive. Well, we don't know that just yet because, it's just happening now. These states are just now, you know, starting to see, what effects marijuana has on, crime and vehicle accidents and stuff. And there are some that say that that there is an increased rate of car accidents and stuff. But let's assume that for most part that most people use the marijuana in a controlled manner and therefore don't get in car accidents and kill people. How is it that something that a state has the if if this is a substance that uh, doesn't have that big of an effect on people, then they have the right, and the states are determined have the right to determine whether they will or will not legalize it, either recreationally or for medicinal purposes. And how is it that the abortion in an abortion, always somebody's going to die in an abortion, and it has an effect on a woman's health. It has women's on her reproductive organs stuff. It can scar her for life. It can actually keep her from ever conceiving again. And yet there are those who would say, well, states don't have the rights to regulate it, or they have to regulate it very liberally to allow women to get this supposed right. Well, no, you don't have a right to kill a life. So you have those who are pushing to have marijuana. They say it's a state's right to determine, it's a justifiable point that a state can regulate substances and stuff within their, if something's grown within the state, it's within the state's right to regulate it within their own borders, or not regulate it if that's what they so choose. Well, how is it that a state can determine what is and is not homicide, but they can't determine that they can't regulate, or they can't put a hindrance on abortion? Where's the state's right to determine that? It's oftentimes determined by a state has the right to determine how or what is classified as a homicide, what's classified as a first degree murder, and all that stuff. So why is it not within the state's right to determine if it's something that does or does not want to be legal? And Roe v. Wade, that's what it did. Is it took away the state's rights to determine this, and it's not a right for a woman to kill a child. You have no right to kill another person. There's no, the only way you have a right to defend to kill somebody is if you're trying to defend your own personal life. If your mortal life is in danger, or the life of somebody else is in danger, only then is homicide justifiable. And it should be within the purview of states to determine that. And that's why I think that with this recent with this issue with the marijuana states' rights, why I think they're actually setting it up to open it up for states to be able to say, hey, if we have the right to regulate marijuana, the substance, why should we not have the same right to regulate abortion within our our borders. And there's just it's just insane that people think that they have a right to kill themselves, kill a child. Heck, they don't even have a right to kill themselves because, anyways, because if murder is murder, then you don't have the right to kill yourself either, because killing yourself is self-murder. But that's often a different topic. Anyways, I'd like to thank you for watching and this video. Please like and subscribe. Most of my videos are based off of game playing and stuff, but there's sometimes when I just feel I just really feel in the mood to talk about something a little more important. Yeah, thanks again for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this. And maybe look forward to hearing your comments, and maybe I'll hear you, or maybe I'll see my other videos as they come out. Thanks again. Thanks for watching. Bye.